All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dimes and Donuts podcast, your deep dive into the BAAD Owners Fantasy League. My name is Garrett, and this week I have not only Nick, but Abby of the Dallas Clovers has decided to join us. How are you doing, Abby?
Chilling. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So let's go straight into trades. Nick, did we have any trades this week?
No trades this week. Way too early in the season. No one's looking to move any of their assets yet.
Love that. Okay, let's go into dimes then. So we'll start off with quarterback. We have Daniel Jones of the Castle Rock Rockers with 32.7 points. Had a terrible first half. They were getting blown out. Sounds like Arizona kind of, threw the towel in. And Daniel Jones ended up getting 32.7 points in a victory.
Yeah, I mean, absolute awesome comeback compared to the previous week in which he kind of didn't do too hot. But,
yeah,
that's just, fantasy for you. But speaking of people who did do pretty well last week and only did even better this week, running back of the week, Kyren Williams, also of the Castle Rock Rockers, put up 30 points, which is, I think a lot of people who have Kyren Williams are going to be very excited because he was not going into the season as a top running back. I didn't hear a lot of buzz about him personally, but he has been doing fantastic, and it's going to be super exciting to see what he does going forward for the rest of the season.
I can't wait. All right, next we've got Keenan Allen on Point Break with 31.1 points. That came out of nowhere for me. I was not expecting Keenan Allen to return back to 2017 form. How long has it been?
Yeah,
It's been a while.
Yeah, he's a top option, though, and I think that all it takes is a couple TDs, and then there you go. Your top wide receiver of the week.
There you go. Do you want to break down tight end? That's also a Plano nuke.
Yeah, speaking of just a couple of TDs to really put you over the top, TJ Hawkinson with 25.6 points was able to bring it home as the number one tight end for me. I'm feeling really good about this. I think Hawkinson's name is going to be coming up more and more as a top tight end, especially long-term as a dynasty asset as, Kelsey and Kittle retire. Not soon, but, if there's going to be a decline over the next 3 years, I'm really excited for having Hawkinson on my team.
That was a trade last year, right?
No, I don't believe so. I took him in the startup. I actually traded with the Dallas Clovers, so Ubby, Pat Fryermuth, who's another.
George Kittle.
That's where I got George Kittle from. Yeah,
I got Pat Fryermuth.
And I think Fryermuth is also going to be a great tight end, though, in the future.
Yeah, he's been helping me, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about defensive linemen, my favorite. So Alex Highsmith of CD's Nuts and Daniil Hunter of the TD11 Tudgays both got 40 points. This is usually where we see, one crazy standout guy, but yeah, both of them putting up crazy numbers. So gotta love that for both teams.
Yeah, and then on the linebacker side of the ball, again, a quick reminder, if you start him in the defensive lineman slot, they're ineligible. And Frankie Louvu of the Castle Rock Rockers, so that's the third Castle Rock Rocker dime this week with 33 points. Frankie Louvu of the Panthers.
It was a good week, and it's funny. The QB and running back, I wasn't expecting. Frankie, he's done this a couple times. Dude is an absolute baller. So 33 points, love to see it. Abby, do you want to take us through defensive back?
Oh, man. Oh, this one was on the waivers, too. Trey Brown, 38 points. Did not expect it at all. I was shocked.
Yeah, clearly no one expected. No one even stashed him. He's not even a bench option in our league. So I'm curious to see if someone's going to end up making a claim on him this week or if it's just a random pop-off.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, cool. So those were our dimes this week. Next, we'll go into donuts. We've only got 2 teams to add to the donut counter this week. That's the Irving Indica and CD's Nuts. The Irving Indica started Hassan Reddick, which I am shocked he had 0 points. Was there a reason for that, Nick?
Not really. He had a 39% snap count. Generally, with a player as good as Hassan Reddick and with that high of a snap count, you'd be hard-pressed to get 0 points. Even just like an assisted tackle, but no, nothing. No point-generating activities.
I don't think it'll happen again, though. I think that was just a 1 week downer. I doubt that'll happen again.
Completely agree.
All right, next we've got Eddie Jackson of CD's Nuts. Again, he had a 17% snap percentage, so not super high, but again, that's our second donut. So both of these teams are going to get another counter added to their donut counter. Not great. Never want to see donuts, but a lot less than last week. I think people were just shaking the rust off, so much better. Love to see it. Nick, do you want to take us through our matchups next?
Yeah, so matchups of the week. I'll take you through a few of them, but I definitely want to leave a few for some of y'all. So, of course, let's start with myself. The reigning champ, the 4-0 king himself is back, baby. I actually think I was 0-4 at this point last season. But, there's a 0 and there's a 4, so it's basically the same thing. But Plano Nukes beat Point Break FC, sending them to 0-4 and myself up to 4-0. Kind of shocked by Point Break FC being 0-4, especially with their team, but, it's only week 2.
Yeah, I agree there. Point Break, like you said at the beginning of the year, we probably thought they'd be doing better than this, but didn't really matter. Scored 326 points. You're going to beat just about anybody. The next matchup we've got, I have to let Abi talk about one of the main reasons you're on the podcast right now. Go for it.
So first of all, everyone has me losing every week, apparently. Always 10th in rankings, but guess what? Guess what, everyone? I won. It was a very close matchup, but all I'm saying is I was 10th at the beginning of the week, and I beat TD11 Tudgaze, who was first, by a mere less than a point. And you know who to thank for that? My rookies. Shout out to the draft. I'm back, baby. We're going all the way.
There you go.
Love that optimism. How many points did you win by?
Oh, less than 1. It was like 0.9 maybe. Yeah, 317.1 to 316.14. I was losing, and then in the last 2 minutes of the Panthers game, Bryce Young got a touchdown and then went for 2, which gave me the 2 points I needed to go on top.
That's so awesome.
That's so crazy.
Happy.
Sounds like we made
I drafted him number 1 overall. He's my guy. That's why we drafted him.
There you go.
That's true. Number 1 overall. Oh, man. Yeah, we could have a budding rivalry between the Dallas Clovers and the TD11 Tudgaze, but I doubt it. I'm sorry, Avi. I think this is a huge flash in the pan. I do not think I'm going to see you in the 300 club the rest of the season.
Wow.
My bias aside, I agree with you. This is probably just a flashing of my rookies. I don't think they're going to be able to do this every week. But next year, y'all watch out. My boys are coming. They're coming hard.
Nick, where do you think the Clovers are going to end up this season?
Well, I'm not too sure. I have some thoughts on it, but we're going to save it for a little bit. Let's keep going through these matchups, and then we'll have plenty of time for that in the power rankings. So next up,
we got
third match
Irving
of the week.
Indica and the Atlanta Cicadas. Atlanta Cicadas ended up taking this one 272 to 258. You got your two middle of the pack teams here. Mm-hmm. This could have plenty of implications later on in the season, but a pretty ho-hum match. Nothing too crazy. Although the Irving Indica only scoring 258 is pretty telling, and a 1-3 start to the season.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. Who's kind of a rough start to the season, but making a little bit of a comeback. Your team, Castle Rock Rockers versus CD's Nuts. Yeah, a little bit. You came back with a vengeance. 348 points scored by the Castle Rock Rockers this week to beat the CD's Nuts team, who put up a very respectable 293 points, by the way, to leave them at 3-1, but not enough to take 348. How do you feel after coming off such a bad week and then now coming back with 348 points?
Not just bad, the worst week we've ever had as a team in 2 seasons.
Right, slow start.
I'd also like to point out that we now have 4 of the top 6 scorers of all time in the Dimes and Donuts League. So if you think this is just a flash in the pan and you think that we're too vulnerable and we're up and down, yada yada, we will be there at the end, hoisting the championship. Anyway, next we've got the Trash Fires and No Robin. No Robin's coming up with the second worst score of the week at 264.34. The Trash Fires owner actually called me and he was like, "Hey, I don't want to look at my fantasy score right now. How did I do?" And I was like, "You actually did pretty well. You beat No Robins. Didn't get the median, but yeah, the Trash Fires off to a 3-1 start. And just like last year, they're a really good team."
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of the median this week was 283 points, so a relatively high median. And every single person outscored their projected value. Some of it was barely outscoring, but every single team outscored their projected value. So kudos to everyone for setting decent enough lineups that beat the analytic nerds.
Way to go. Love to hear it.
Okay.
All right, so next, why don't you take us through the standings real quick?
Yeah, so we got through the matchups. Let's talk the fun stuff, where that sort of plays out. Now, a reminder, the top 2 spots, so the top 6 teams make playoffs, but the top 2 slots get a bye. And so those are going to be very interesting to watch as the season progresses. But as of right now, chilling in number 1 by themselves are the Plano Nukes, my team, the only 4-0, the only undefeated team left. Followed up by the number 2, it's kind of a 3-way tie in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th slot at 3-1. TD Love and Tudgaze at 2nd, the Trash Fires at number 3, and CD's Nuts at number 4. We'll talk about the power rankings in a little bit, but CD's Nuts at 3-1 feels kind of like a overplay based on how we've been ranking them previously. All right, then we go into the 2-2s, the 500 teams. Castle Rock Rockers at 2-2, huge comeback from the previous week. Atlanta Cicadas at 6, and the Dallas Clovers at number 7, 2-2, which I think, and Avi, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the highest in the standings your team has ever been.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Big congratulations.
I think I got 9 for 2 weeks in year 1, but we're going up. My rookies are doing their job. I'd also like to point out that I'm for Atlanta Cicadas, they only have basically 10.6 or something more points than me. So I'm coming up on you. I'm coming up on them.
There you go. And if you do pass them, again, that 6 is the playoff spot. So the Dallas Clovers are threatening, as of right now, playoff contenders.
It's interesting that you bring up the Atlanta Cicadas points for, because you still have the lowest points for in the league.
Points against. To be fair, Atlanta one of the highest against.
Right.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, I'm gonna do the bottom. So we've got Irving Indica at 8. Shocking. I cannot believe that.
I agree.
Next, no Robins, which I predicted preseason. And then Point Break FC, which neither of us predicted. We thought they'd doing a lot better than this.
Well, I mean, with
at 0-4.
With Ubby's point, though, he's talking about points against. Point Break has 661 points against them right now. So
that doesn't mean anything when it comes to the median.
Completely agree. No, completely agree. But it'll be interesting to see if they're able to squeak out some more match-to-match wins, going forward, as that sort of regresses to the mean, as people love to say.
Fair enough.
This coming week, so we'll see what happens.
Oh, that'll be an exciting matchup.
Will it?
Well.
Next, we're going to go into the power rankings. So, why don't you go ahead and do the top, and then Abby, why don't you do the bottom?
Sure.
All right, so number 1 this week, retaining their slot, are the TD Love and Tudgaze. That team is just so good. I mean, even though they're 3-1 right now, they lost to the previous week's 10th power ranked team, the Dallas Clovers. I still think they're the best team in the league. They still got 300 and over 300 points. I mean, that's a top team. Holding on to the number 2 slot as well, the Nukes. Again, 4-0. You're undefeated. You're going to be in the top.
You got to give it to it.
Otherwise, right? Number 3, starting to climb back up to their preseason power ranking of number 1. The Rockers are holding firm at that 3 slot, followed up then by the Trash Fires at 4 and the Irving Indica at 5, despite only being 1-3.
I think those are super fair rankings, especially Indica. It's so hard to drop them that far, just because you look at the talent on the team. Same with the Tudgaze. They can lose to arguably the worst team in the league, and because their fantasy lineup is so good, you just can't drop them that low after 2 weeks of the season. So we don't want too much crazy movement yet, but I think this is exactly where the top 5 need to be.
Then for 6 and 7, this is curious to me. So you guys have placed CD's Nuts at 6 and Cicadas at 7. Mind explaining that a bit? When Cicadas is up by a win or 2, I believe. They're 3-1. Cicadas are 2-2.
Go for it, Nick.
Yeah, so I think that for the CD's Nuts especially, the biggest thing that's hurting them, despite the 3-1 record, is just confidence in the squad. I think quarterback-wise, they have Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson's already been hurt twice in the 2 games he's played. He had left, I believe, due to a thigh bruise in the first game, and then he had that concussion. He went through concussion protocol in the second. Questionable if he's going to be able to play play the Anthony Richardson game if he keeps getting hurt. Justin Fields is the only real. He has good stars in Christian McCaffrey, CeeDee Lamb, Godwin. I mean, those are big names. And of course, he just got the Dime of the Week with Alex Highsmith, and he has a bunch of other great defensive talent. I mean, the question is just, is this sustainable? And as of right now, we have him as a playoff team. It's going to be interesting to see moving forward if he's able to keep this up. If he is, I think he's going to slowly keep just climbing those power rankings.
Yeah, exactly what you said. I think that it was not an easy decision by any means. Once we get down into the middle, it gets a lot harder. But through 2 weeks, I think this is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I'm very interested in. Number 8, for the first time in all of BAAD Owners history, I have jumped from 10 to not 9, but 8. And I am very proud of my team for doing this. But, I feel like that's a good spot for us. I honestly, bias aside, do think I should be closer to 9 than 8. But I appreciate the lookout and, props to my team for pulling it out. At 9, we have Point Break, 0 and 4. Very unfortunate. Hopefully, they keep going down so I can keep going up. And then Robins at 10, which is understandable. Their team, they were 9th last year. We were in the same spot. We were drafting for picks, and at the end of the day, our teams are built for the future. But I feel like the last 3 spots make sense. Just the 6 and 7, that's going to be tough to place, especially when it's that close. It's going to keep changing, but I'm excited to see what happens next week.
Yeah, this was the biggest point of contention in the power rankings this week, was where to put the Clovers, because you cannot deny scoring that many points as a huge feat, especially when you're saying your rookies are going off. I get that. I really do. But I just think 8 is a little too high. I think 9 makes a lot more sense because, again, this is supposed to be a power ranking. So we're supposed to be projecting how we think these teams are going to end up. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you take into account what's happening at the time. But through 2 weeks, I don't think you do it that much. And Nick, you thought that they deserved this spot. So I'm going to let you talk about it more.
Yeah, I do. And really what it comes down to is that, look, I think Point Break is still a very good team. But Point Break is 0 and 4. No Robins are 0 and 4. And when you're 0 and 4, you deserve to be at the bottom of the power rankings. I agree with what you're saying, that power rankings are about projecting the future. They're not a standings. But if you just keep losing, it's not working.
Keep losing it 2 weeks.
Exactly.
That's the hard part. It's only 2 weeks.
And I think that
if you look at their points, for, they are separated by 0.18, both being at the bottom of the barrel at 509.64 for the Clovers as the lowest in the league, and 509.82. So if you're not scoring, you deserve to be at the bottom. But if you just look at these rosters, I don't think that Point Break, especially with their QB room, is going to be this low in the future. You got to remember, this week alone, you had Patrick Mahomes and the Prince who was promised playing in a game that ended up 9-17.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to continue to happen.
No,
I think that
totally
Point Break
agree.
has a great roster, and they will be a much better team at the end compared to the Clovers. Now, do I think the Clovers next year are going to be a much better team? Of course. And do I think that they've vastly improved? Yes. But improving from number 10 to 8 after 2 weeks, I don't see.
And I think that's totally
I agree.
fair.
I can agree with that. 10 to, I understand what both of you are
There
saying.
you go. Straight from the horse's mouth.
No, I think what you're saying is fair.
I'm gonna be real, jokes aside, every win I take, I'm gonna talk and be up. But I know what this is. Last season I went into this knowing that I'm gonna have to rebuild. This is a rebuilding season. If I do manage to squeak it into the playoffs, y'all are gonna have to block me on everything.
I will block you on everything because I've talked so much nonsense on this.
I will flip everything, and I'll make a montage Obby's team sucks. Never gonna crack 300 again.
We're giving the Clovers bulletin board material.
I'm going to turn notifications on 100%.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, is there anything else in the power rankings that really stands out? I mean, I think the Nukes staying at 2, we'll see. I mean, I think it's your consistency that keeps you up there, but I really think that the difference between like 5 and the rest of the league is still so disparate. Like the Irving Indica, Trash Fires, Rockers, Nukes, Tudgays, those are the top 5 teams. And I think everybody else is playing for one playoff spot.
I don't know. To me, I really think that at where we're at in the season, there's just so much room for anyone to still absolutely surprise everyone. I mean, look, think about
and
last
you're
season.
saying the optimal word there, surprise. It would be odd if it happened. Right?
No, I agree with that. But think about last season at the end of week 2. I was 0-4. And then I ended up just winning every single game except for 2 more for the rest of the season.
And yet you're the one that wants to put Point Break at 9.
Agreed, but I think that I deserve to be. I think that I deserve to be at the bottom of the power rankings back then, and then I think that I worked the way back up by getting win after win after win. It's the same sort of similar situation with the Trash Fires. We didn't rank the Trash Fires very high despite a weaker roster than a lot of other teams. Like I think CD's Nuts and the Atlanta Cicadas on paper are loaded. Yeah, but then the Trash Fires just kept winning.
If you're going from a coaching standpoint, sure. I think I don't know. I look at the roster so much, and I assume that at some point any team can bounce back with them. But yeah, like you said, the Trash Fires and your team, those are great examples of teams that because of coaching are where they're at and were where they were at last year. So that's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, though, it's fantasy. Anything can happen. A player can get hurt. A player can have a breakout. You just never know on a week-to-week basis. So it's going to be really exciting following every single team for the rest of the season.
I agree.
Talking about players getting hurt, I just want to give a quick, prayer or shout out to Nick Chubb. I hope he's going to be doing all right. Just a terrible injury. Hope he can bounce back.
Absolutely. I think that that's rough. It's a terrible, terrible injury. It's a rough game.
Something about Monday Night Football. Does everybody get hurt?
No.
Yeah, terrible. The last 3, what was it? You got Hamlin with basically cardiac arrest. Then you have Rodgers ACL, and then you have Chubb.
Yeah, all 3 were awful. All right, well, thank you guys so much for watching week 2 of the 2023 BAAD Owners Fantasy Podcast. Do you guys have anything you want to say to sign off?
Just thank you again for having me, and hopefully I'll be back with some more trash talking.
Awesome. The Nukes are undefeated.